one final portion to go, and that's the listeners' questions. So I pinged over the questions that we're going to answer to you earlier on, Nick. So we've got a couple of questions that we're going to look at, both AEW related, which is quite apt considering that this podcast is focused quite heavily on AEW this week. But the first question from Ashley Clements then, and Ashley asks, was the Pac and Omega match guilty of having too many near falls in a 30-minute Iron Man match, and on par with Ciampa versus Cole for the amount of near falls, and with there only being 2 falls in the 30 minutes, did it feel more like a 2 out of 3 falls match instead? So I think Ashley is saying, was there too many near falls? Could they have possibly had less near falls? And did it kind of feel more like a 2 out of 3 falls match instead of a 30-minute Iron Man match? Usually when you get these Iron Man matches, whether they're 30 minutes, an hour long, you normally get multiple pinfalls. I personally like the fact that they didn't have too many falls. And as I said earlier, I found that the 30 minutes went by very, very quickly. So, with that, sometimes when you see Iron Man matches on the WWE product, they have maybe 10 or 15 minutes without one pinfall, and then they have kind of multiples that just kind of roll off the back of one another, and it gets a bit ridiculous. You could be 3-2 up, or 5-4 up, or some combination of but this seemed a little bit more realistic in my eyes, because it was just, if you think about a 30-minute match, you realistically you probably get 1 fall, maybe 2 falls. So this felt real to me, and I felt they played it really, really well. Yes, I think in modern day wrestling there's a lot of close near falls, there's a lot of kickouts to add that extra element of drama. And we've seen a lot of it on NXT as well. We see a lot of it in Japanese wrestling as well, over in New Japan in particular, where there's these series of close near falls and lots of kickouts just to build that drama. Sometimes it can get a little bit too much. If I'm honest with you, I think it was during the Adam Cole Tommaso Ciampa match from TakeOver Portland. I felt that it was a little bit overkill there with the amount of close near falls and kickouts and lack of selling, to be honest with you. But I thought that the story they told on Wednesday night between Pac and Omega was absolutely perfect. There was a lot of selling. They obviously went through a hell of a battle between the two of them. I felt that just having the 2 falls was quite realistic. I couldn't fault it, to be honest with you. But what about yourself, Nick? How would you answer Ashley's question there?
I think 2 falls was plenty. I mean, these are 2 of the top guys in AEW, both been portrayed as tough guys, proper badasses. Takes a lot to put them down. I think if they'd have got anything more than 2 falls, it would have weakened the characters, because it would have been like, well, how can they get pinned so many times within a 30-minute space when we've seen them go through so much stuff beforehand? And only get 1 pin in a 20-minute match or a 25-minute match or something like that. So I've not got an issue with the just being 1 pin each. I think it fits the integrity of the characters. The 2 out of 3 falls match stipulation as opposed to an Iron Man match, it needed to be an Iron Man match for the timer to run out whilst Omega was in the submission. If it wasn't an Iron Man match, that ending wouldn't work. So I think obviously it's been designed with that in mind.
Yeah, interesting, but good question from Ashley. Hopefully we've answered your question well enough. But then we get to our next question from Mags. Now, Mags has been on the podcast a couple of times before, and Mags asks, does a Moxley win at Revolution indirectly tarnish the prestige of the AEW title, considering he's a mid-card title holder in New Japan? So, of course, Jon Moxley is the current IWGP United States heavyweight champion over in New Japan, of course. So does a win for Moxley as the new AEW champion, does it kind of tarnish the prestige of that championship, considering he's a mid-card title holder over in New Japan? I'm going to start with you, Nick. What's your thoughts on this one? And if Moxley does win, does it kind of tarnish the prestige of AEW, considering he's a mid-card title holder over in Japan at the moment?
I think if you look back at the history of the US title in New Japan, obviously Cody's held it, Lance Archer, the guys that held it previously. I know it is a mid-card title, but I think the people that held it previously kind of elevate it. And no, I don't think it does tarnish it. I think it's a US title. He's a US wrestler. To me, I would look at it that way, as in it's a weird one. I get where the question is coming from, but I think over the years we've had so many world champions hold the Intercontinental title, the US title after they've held world titles. It kind of blurs the lines a little bit between the mid-card titles and the top tier title. I mean, it's like the Intercontinental title was top belt on Raw for so long because Brock was never around. So you had Seth Rollins being the man whilst he was Intercontinental title holder. So yeah, it's a weird one.
I get where you're coming from, and I think that the United States Championship over in New Japan is quite a prestigious title. I mean, you mentioned some really big names there of wrestlers that have held the US title over in New Japan. With the likes of Cody and currently John Moxley, of course. And many that have gone on to really big and better things, and those that have kind of held world championships before going over to Japan in the first place. And I think, the US title is quite a prestigious title in its own right. And I think, any kind of championship that you can hold in Japan kind of adds credibility to the wrestler, to be honest with you. And it's an interesting question from Mags, most definitely. But I personally wouldn't say it tarnishes the prestige of the AEW World Title if Moxley was to win it, considering he's a quote unquote mid card title holder over in Japan. So it's an interesting one. I think the US title is a bit more than just a mid card title. I think, as I said, earlier on, it is quite a prestigious title. And I think all the championships over in New Japan can be considered prestigious. And if you're lucky enough to be able to hold one of those championships, you're definitely held in kind of high esteem. Definitely considering how serious New Japan Pro Wrestling is taken as a wrestling organization. But no, personally, I don't think it does tarnish the prestige of the AEW title if Moxley was to win it on Saturday night. But any final thoughts on Mags's question there then, Nick?
It's one of those. It's a stupidly good question because it's kind of like this. You could discuss it for ages because there's going to be like, well, there's this point and there's this point. I agree with you. I don't think it does take it. Like I think any bout in New Japan holds a level of prestige about it. The respect and everything like that it holds purely because, like I say, wrestling in Japan, it's just held to such a high degree. They've got to be. I know it doesn't take it. I mean, on the flip side, I know it's sort of out to the left a little bit, but when Warrior held the Intercontinental and the World title, did that demolish the Intercontinental title, or did it demolish the World title when he held both at the same time?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully, Mags, that answers your question. So please get in touch if you want to kind of send us any more listener questions. Obviously, you can email us wrestlingwithjohners@gmail.com, or get in touch with us. You can DM us through our Twitter account, and that's @withjohners_pod, or you can get in touch with us via the Wrestling with Johners Facebook community page. So we'll be asking you for more listener questions ahead of episode 108 or 109, whatever we're up to next weekend, when we talk more NXT and AEW and the fallout from Revolution. So thank you to Ashley and Mags for asking those questions.